Okay. All right. Can you hear us, Greg?
Yep, thank you.
All right. Okay. 5 o'clock, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to call to order the November 18th, 2021 Harpersburg Special Town Council meeting to order. All members of the council are present with the exception of Kevin Carden and Jim Jenkins, and we have Storm via whatever this is, video or whatever we call that. Christian, can I ask you to make the...
Sure, I got mine here. Okay. Let's see. Until further notice, the Corporation of Harpersburg governing and deliberative bodies will hold meetings and or hearings virtually via Zoom webinar, which provides for public participation during a public comment period when applicable and when posted on the agenda, which it was. Alternatively, the public may watch by YouTube via video live stream or listen by telephone. These options comply with the Open Governmental Meetings Act.
Thank you. We have 5 agenda items this evening. I think we can get through them hopefully fairly expeditiously. Number 1, discussion action on award of contract for request for proposal RFP for removal, transport, and disposal of post-processing sludge. With us this evening, we have the president of the Water Commission, Mr. Bill Robinson, and Laurel also is a member of the Water Commission, and Debbie, you're going to help us walk through here. So let me turn it over to whichever one.
Okay.
And Chris and I were in the meeting last night, and Storm from the Budget and Finance Committee.
Chris and Storm are the bid evaluating team, budget and finance.
Okay, great.
Right.
Okay. So I think they make sure the minutes reflect that part of it.
So this request for proposal is to address the removal of sludge from the post-processing sedimentation basins. We have in our current water budget $50,000 allocated for that project. And we did put out a request for proposal that went live on the 10th and closed at 4:30 last night. We received 2 bids or 2 proposals to address that posting. They are different in how they are in method, and so I'm going to let Bill explain the differences between the 2 processes, and then I'll go back and talk to you about how we evaluated them, and then we'll also review things that we learned in the water treatment plant progress meeting today that will be very relevant to the course of action we want to take with regard to these bids.
Okay. The bids that we received, one was Clean Management Environmental Group, and and they their proposal was to using a pump and tanker trucks to agitate the sludge into a slurry and suck it up with a pump and into a tanker truck, and then several tanker truck loads later they will have them empty, which is a pretty straightforward process. I guess I should back up a little bit. We did an RFP, a request for proposals, because unlike the other bids for some of the water projects where we have everything engineered, an RFP asks the prospective bidders to not only give us the cost of what they will do it for, but we also want them to tell us how they would propose to solve our problem. And each of these bids had a different modality for removing that sludge. Clean Management was just a pumping and hauling, which was, when we found out we were able to do that, that's sort of what started the RFP process itself. The second one, which is the more, it's the longer, more pages one. Hydrochem they proposed a different mechanism for, instead of just pumping it out and hauling it away, they're removing the sludge, putting it into what's called a belt press, which is, instead of letting gravity pull the water out of the sludge like we have been doing with the equipment that we own, they mechanically press the water out of the sludge and then haul the remaining off in dumpsters. A little more complicated process. It raised some other questions, but those are the two different modalities that were proposed. Anybody have any questions about it? And there's not really one's not necessarily better than the other. They're just different with different cost concerns and different processes.
So in order to evaluate the bids inside of the request proposal, it is described that 10 points, we would use not just only price as the determinant, but we would assess 100 points to each vendor at each bid, and 10 points would be dedicated to evaluating approach, methodology, and the timeline. And then 90 points would be evaluated for their cost, the clarity of the cost proposal, addressing the potential excessive costs that we might run into, and the total cost of the project. And so what we did was each bid evaluator received a bid or evaluation sheet, which you see, you have a summary of, but each one has their own. And the items that had to do with approach, methodology, and timeline received a yes and a no answer. So a yes was a point, a no was not a point. And we, the evaluators went through after reviewing the bids, assigned their points to each of those things. I added their points together, and on your summary sheet, you have then the total points between the three of them that were assessed for each area, and the total points in the approach, methodology, and timeline. In the cost area, we had some discussion about exactly how to weight those various aspects of the cost. And we decided that the 10, I forgot. I think it was 10, yes, it was 10 points for clarity, 10 points for their ability to address the potential excessive cost issue, and then
70
for
total cost.
Yeah, so I'm not about
Points.
Yeah, that's at 70, so 90, right? And 70 total points for the total cost. So again, you'll see where we have a total a larger number, like the first one on the first bid is 24 and clarity of cost, but that would have had a maximum of 30 opportunity available to it. So then added all those up, came and then added the two areas together, came up with a total score, and then divided that score by 3, and that gave us the bid score of 100 points. Everybody following the method of evaluation? Any questions on
And
that?
this is the first time we've done this way.
Right.
And not like with points.
Correct. And not every, this is the point system, which was very useful in evaluating this particular set of proposals, is not something you would always necessarily use.
Right.
But in situations where you're asking them to provide technical information about how they're going to solve a problem, and also cost information, frequently the percentage breakdown between the technical and the cost will be different than the one we selected here. Our primary concern was cost, because we were pretty aware of the universe of modalities that they could implement, but we still wanted them to describe it with some degree of detail for us to
Understanding, so that we were able to in turn understand our risks and understand what was really going to happen, because it's all a big unknown. So this allowed us the opportunity to sort of quantify how they handled that, which then also reflects a little bit our level of comfort with them as a potential vendor, I think. So I think we felt pretty good about that. So as you can see then from the scoring that you have, bid number one, which was for clean management, had a bid score of 72.66, and bid number two had a bid score of 39.66. And you can also tell from that primarily that has to do with pricing being a major component. As you can see from the bids themselves, the clean management, their estimation is $92,900 plus a little bit more. And the hydrochem estimation is 190, I believe. 177, thank you. 177. So given that we have 50,000 in our budget, knowing things that we now have in our budget, this plays a role. Okay, so the recommendation from the budget and finance group and their evaluation, I'm gonna just skip over that for the moment. Okay, and go over to some things that we learned today and following up with the water treatment plant progress report. If you recall, part of the reason that we entered into this bid in November, knowing that it was kind of on the horizon, but we're really pressing to get it done quickly, was that we needed to get enough sludge out of at least one of those basins for the contractor to be able to measure some components that they needed to order and replace in order for the process to be functional once the basins are cleaned and the new system is operating. And we just weren't doing that with the speed of confidence that we were going to get there. And that was why we were really pressing on this, because we also know that the colder the weather gets, the more difficult it is to create a slurry and to pull the material out with any predictable speed. And that also the colder it gets, the slower that will be, the harder that will become. So on the day that we put the bid out, we found out that the contractor and the folks down in our groups down there, our staff down there, worked hard to make a workaround to be able to clear out the sludge in front of the area where the components that required measurement were. And they were able to successfully do that, get down in there, make the measurements that they needed in order to order the equipment that's required for those basins. So that is now on order. So that sort of has put the fire out for the moment. What we asked today was, what pressure are we under now? Or what timeline are we under now to really need to have those basins cleaned out? And we learned that they really don't need to be completely cleaned out until probably the spring when they get the new system going and we're really up to speed on that. So the other piece of the puzzle is that we have ordered these parts, but we don't have them yet. And when we get the basin nice and cleaned out, that's the ideal time to get down in there and replace the parts. So I asked the question of when we would have them. I heard at best 6 weeks, but they really didn't know. And 2 months ago, they were saying it could be 6 months. I mean, they were really just kind of all over the place. I did ask the gentleman if he could try and get an answer for us today, but I didn't have time.
I have the answer.
Oh, you have the answer?
Yes. They expect the valve supplier estimated delivery of the valves to the sludge basin mid to late December at earliest. That's not a completely firm time. That's the best we can get. So
okay, so 6 to 8 weeks was about what we were. Yeah.
We're with the holidays, it's extremely unlikely that there would be any activity with respect to that until into the new year.
Okay.
And where that falls on the construction timeline gives us a buffer of time to.
So now we say to ourselves, okay, so there's two things that we need to consider with the cold weather. One is the thing that I was talking about where slows down the ability for the sludge to become a slurry. And really, once it gets under 35 degrees, I think we've heard it just really isn't even an option for us to do it. The other thing is that when the sludge is taken away, I think particularly in the clean management option,
Correct.
it then goes to be dumped in a field. And you can't dump it if the field is frozen. So they didn't really talk about that in here, but in their bid, but we don't want to get ourselves into a situation where they can't dump it, and then that ends up causing us another cost issue that we weren't thinking of.
Correct, because then we end up having to pay for that material to store until such time as it's able to be done.
Right.
And, you know, when you get to that point, your ability to manage your costs goes up and down.
So, all of those things, I think I hit the highlight points of that particular thought. Oh, do we have Jim? Oh no, that's the storm is downtown.
Oh, sorry, that's the train.
The train bell, the train whistle. Yeah, that was good point. So those things in mind, we want you to think about that, because if they come on site, this is probably going to be a 2 to 3 week operation. If they come, by the time we're going to have to revise our water budget to be able to handle this much money. This is not necessarily a finite number. We don't know, but that's going to take us a little bit of time to do that. So meeting doesn't mean that we can't make it happen, but we can. But cutting the contract for this, I don't see happening before the 1st of December with the holiday in there. And now you're in December, and so you're looking at a 2 to 3 week operation. And if we get a cold snap and they can't work, their equipment is sitting there, and they, that's going to be, again, potentially more expensive to us. If they say, look, it's just gotten too cold altogether, we need to leave and come back in the spring, that's a haul away and a delivery of equipment. Again, that is additional cost to us. So we wanted you to have all of those facts as you consider which and or if it's time to execute the contract, or perhaps delay and perhaps rebid, because these have time frames on them when they're accurate, but maybe run a new proposal. So I wanted you to have all that information if you proceed. And maybe Christian, you want to speak to what question of finance chose discussed last night in terms of
budget and finance, and it was just the 3 of budget and finance, and from now on will be the go-to when it comes to bidding. By the way, the same people in budget and finance are there working on procurement protocols, and we should hopefully have that put together in the next meeting, maybe 2, and have that together. And that would be for the town, for both the Corporation of Harpers Ferry, including the waterworks operations. And most of these bids that we're going to get are going to be pretty much coming from waterworks. At least the big ones, the ones over 25,000. So, so last night we went through the whole process. It's a little, it seems like it appears that I'm thinking, this wasn't last night. We just knew we had to pick one, and we did go through the process. I thought it was an excellent exercise. I think it took an hour and a half, but I think we'll move a little quicker in the future. So at this point, we selected the one, but my thought is that I kind of concur with you guys' theory about postponing it until the spring.
And so there was a recommendation made coming forth to make the one, but council gets to decide.
You guys get to, we've made a recommendation on clean management from the 2 we had, and we, and that Chris put the motion together.
And I will mention that we made that recommendation with 2 contingencies. really neither one of the companies provided us with some important information that we'd asked for, including licensing, documentation for licensing, permitting, and insurance. So we made
Direct chemical analysis of the.
Soil sample, yeah.
Chemical, their own chemical.
So we really had incomplete picture last night, but we were under the impression that we have to move quickly.
You did not have the information that we had this morning.
Right.
So it was contingent upon getting that information plus the moving the money around.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
the
it
budget.
would fit in the budget.
The money.
I have a question, I think for Bill, that I think can help us make a decision about if we need to proceed now. And that is, do you have a sense of, I think it comes down to what's the potential cost of doing the work and running into weather and having the delay versus if there is a potential cost of delaying having the sludge removed, like if the valve did arrive on time and that the sludge was not removed, is there a cost to that?
Well, I mean, yes, there's a cost associated. If the valves arrive tomorrow and they wanted to put them in, beginning of December, there would be a cost. That's not going to happen. And based on our discussions with the construction team and the engineers, the urgency of emptying that sludge out is no longer what it was prior to them putting the metal sheet in and getting that corner cleared enough to measure the valve. So they seem to concur with our feeling that waiting until we get back to warmer weather on the other side of the cold season made sense. In part because if we go with one of these, if we use one of the contractors that is able to, remove it in a matter of a week or two rather than, over a longer period of time. But if we can get on it pretty quickly in the spring, I think that will probably be based on our discussions this morning with the construction team, probably our most cost-effective time to do it.
Can I ask another question? So if we don't see any problem with waiting till the spring, then is it possible we can submit an RFP again before then and maybe get other bidders in to maybe lower the price?
Yeah.
That gives us time.
Yeah, in fact, we will likely have,
Go the other way too. Let's keep that in
Well,
mind.
yes,
don't know.
it could go the other way. It's unlikely that it will go appreciably the other way. The advantages of waiting till warmer weather are this will go faster, so it will take the time cost will be lower. Their ability to probably use a little bit less water and essentially less gallonage will reduce the cost. And there won't be any risk of having to store the material or anything like that. And if we continue on the days that are warm enough to utilize the pumping mechanism we have for removing this in place now, that amount will go down incrementally until we're ready for a faster modality to come in and take the rest.
and
And
also,
go ahead.
we might be about to say the same thing, but in terms of the ability to get bids, if anything, it will improve. By then, we'll
Correct.
likely have our electronic bidding process up and running. And that is, we believe will widen the field of people that will be exposed to our bids.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And the other advantage of doing it on the electronic bidding platform is that the bidders will not be able to file their bid until they have put in their information on their insurance, to put in their permits, so we will have more complete bids. And so this would be, that would be advantageous as well.
And it may very well be, we'll be doing electronic bidding at that time.
Right. Yeah, I think by then we'll be ready to do that, absolutely.
Well, and having that, we have the luxury of time that we didn't have prior to when this, when we put this together, we were under the gun. And the gun has since been lifted. So we have we'll be able to have a longer period for publication and all of that. So we think we can be a little more careful. We can fine tune this after the lessons we learned in doing this one.
Is there a chance if we're removing some already and have more time, is there a chance that we would be able to do
All of it?
remove all of it ourselves?
That's pretty chancy.
That,
I know it's a lot of stuff.
no, not really. And that discussion we should save for another time.
Okay.
Because we've had that in place for over a year now. And it's slow, but it's not that slow. But if between now and spring,
Ain't gonna happen.
no, especially with cold weather.
You can't do it in the winter anyway.
And we ran it every day,
Yeah.
maybe broke it into 2 shifts a day, we'd get it out of there. But with the cold, it's gonna be like 25 tomorrow night or something. So, we get into those cold days, we can't really move much or at all.
Yeah.
But I think we can, with diligent use of the pump that we have down there and the gravity dewatering system, I think we can reduce that cost in a meaningful way between now and when we would go back to this.
Well, I feel satisfied with this new information and this discussion. I feel like I'm ready to not make a decision. That is, I guess it's not really a motion if we are not actually voting on accepting a bid. I do not feel that we need to do that.
Postponing it.
Because out of deference to the bidders, I think because new information has been presented and the costs are beyond the scope of what we were prepared to spend in that short a window, I think, and there are, the bids are both lacking in information that we consider to be vital. I think we can responsibly, under West Virginia law, just reject all
We
bids.
could take our motion and just, the recommendation and vote it down. Would that be?
Well, you're making a recommendation, they don't have to accept it. Am I right about that? Yeah.
Say that again.
Well, just because they make a recommendation, you don't have to accept it, or if you accept it, you can accept it with modification, or you can, there's no reason why you can't say there's new information that they didn't know, so we're gonna do something different.
I'm just reflecting back how we handled the previous.
I think a motion to reject all bids, all proposals at this time with an option to, with informing them that we will do this again at a later date, is appropriate.
And also an explanation about the fact that there is new information that's come to light that is reduced, that it's opened up our time frame. All the bids were higher than we thought that we could handle in our budget right now. And with explanation to them, we'll provide all of that so that they realize what we're doing.
There's language in the RFP about that we're not obligated to.
Yes.
award it. We
Exactly.
heard it as well.
Well, and there's a provision in West Virginia state law regarding competitive bidding that you always have the option to reject all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I got a couple questions here. What is the downside or downsides to postponing? Just so I'm clear in my own mind. Bill, what do you see as a downside or sides to postponing this till mid-March?
Well, because the risks we face are, I think it's a downside that sludge is still there. I still have to think about sludge. I would feel wonderful if that stuff was gone. There's a part of me that just wants it gone because we've been wrangling with this for quite some time. I think another downside is that as we've seen you know, things can change, things are fluid down there at the construction. And, which is why we kind of, you know, really got them to commit to understanding that this is, you know, we were looking at doing this in the spring and how is that going to affect the construction timeline and all of that. It's possible that those things could change again. So we're at, you know, we will be coordinating with our construction team if they, you know, articulate a renewed need for it to be more urgent. I'm pretty comfortable that that's not likely, but there's no way I could guarantee that, and they can't guarantee that. But I think after our discussion today, they're aware of where we are on this, and the most pressing needs has been addressed. Other than that, you know, the risk is if we do not diligently use the equipment we currently have, then we run the risk of increasing and not decreasing the sludge. Because we still have to make water. And because of aspects of the construction process, the risk of increased amounts of sediment towards the end of, you know, we start removing filtration, you know, half clear, going down to one filter and things like that. So we need to encourage strongly, maybe admonish our team down there to make sure that that thing is run every minute that it is capable of running.
Well, the flip side of that would be, what if we decide to postpone this and in a way to capture monies in our budget, we get rid of the dumpster down there now and we get rid of Oscar now, and what would that savings be?
$70, $90 a month.
I forget. Second question I had was, is there a part in the bid
Oh,
from,
wait, 1 second, backing up on that. If by chance they were to fill that dumpster and get it hauled one more time, they would add about maybe another $600.
okay, that's not significant enough then. Clean management, their bid. Is there a section in there that anybody knows that if we could just delay implementation of the bid until March, that the bid stays on the table, but we won't rebid? And is there anything in there that this has to be approved within 90 days, 120 days, 240?
It's not in the
It does not say that.
Nothing in there.
No, I think that the other one may have a time limit as to how long it's good as an estimate.
It does. 30 days from the date of the cover date.
Okay.
So it's 30 days. The other one,
On hydrogen.
and hydrogen. No.
I think the questions I would have for opting to go that way would be that our amount of sludge is likely to decrease if we do our job right. And it may get to a point where it's not attractive to them to be locked in at this, you know, they made this bid based on current conditions.
Right.
And they haven't provided us with the kinds of reassuring documentation of permitting, licensure, and things like that. So I don't think in this instance that Bird in the Hand has the kind of value that it might in other, you know.
Okay. I think, Bill, you mentioned that in the bid that we received from both organizations, there was some void information that they did not include. So if we rebid this in the spring, we now have an experience base on what to prioritize, I guess, to capture the information that we did not receive in either one of the bids, correct? Isn't there pertinent information that we didn't receive?
Yeah.
We know what that is. With our experience base that we have now, is there a more stringent way that we can ensure that we get that information?
Well,
that we can have built into the bid process?
we can certainly word it more strongly. I think I thought the RFP made it pretty clear that we expected those things and that those were important to us.
And if we have the new electronic process, it will be required. They won't be able to
Right.
submit the bid without that information.
That was the second part of my response, is that we're going to a process where the bid can't be submitted until it's complete.
Correct.
And we can select the things that we require them to complete, or else it won't transmit. So, yes, on both counts, I think we will be able to avoid that for the foreseeable future by converting to the electronic process.
There was also a pretty quick turnaround on this, so they didn't have a lot of time
That's
to,
true.
to do the response. And it could take more time.
There's another thing that I don't think we even addressed in our meeting yesterday, and I'm noticing on here is earliest time frame to completion. We didn't have that. We don't know whether they can start next week or in
Yeah.
January, so, and that was actually critical, and that's not even, wasn't
Well,
addressed in either bid.
and our evaluation strategy for each bidding process that we're gonna undergo over the next few years will be impacted by things like time frame. You know, when we thought we had to have this out, you know, ASAP or else, you know, we would begin incurring significant costs of idling construction. That's gone now, but that was, when we made that decision, you know, those things were, you know, we weighted things a little differently, but yes, we don't have the kind of timeline that we were really asking for it, and I think the RFP is pretty clear on it.
Well, I don't see it in here. I don't see it. The date, from RFP,
For the time frame?
the timeframe.
Well, all of those attributes that are on there, I pulled out.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying
We did not select a specific date for completion by, because we wanted them to tell us how long it's gonna take.
okay, but we didn't get our timeline.
No, we did not get our time.
Are we comfortable how successful this was? Does it need any mods or anything?
Well, I think probably it could, if we, you know.
It can always be
it can always
improved.
be improved on. It was also done very quickly.
I think it's
So,
90% there.
Yeah, I think and I think we learned, we always learn, there's always room for improvement, so.
Okay, I got two other points. Number one, if it is the consensus of this group to postpone, then I think before we actually send something out officially, that we have Floyd weigh in on this, just like he did with the Elk Run thing, where we got that exchange back and forth. Bill, if you remember that?
Yep.
So let's not forget that part of it. The other part is, out of courtesy, is Chris Steyer, has he been informed of this, and does he concur with this? I think out of a courtesy, Bill, if you could reach out to Chris and let him know what's going on.
Courtesy as to,
The action, that what action we will take this evening.
oh, yeah.
Okay.
He is aware of, I will have a direct conversation with him, but he was present and aware when we discussed the reduced pressure
That's fine.
to get it done.
That's fine. Okay, so back to Debbie's thing. I think we should probably put on the floor an official motion to
I'm prepared to make a motion.
to reject pending final legal review by Hoy. So if somebody would cast that, you go ahead, Storm.
Yes, although what was the last part? Pending legal review by,
By Hoy Shingleton.
Well, then we can't make a decision tonight.
Well,
We'd have to wait for
I think
this.
you can based upon.
okay,
Okay, let's do it without that in the motion, and then Bill will contact, or Debbie won't be here. Bill will contact Hoy, and basically, Hoy, this is the direction that we're pursuing. Are there any bear traps there? We don't think so, but just like he did before with an email. Okay, so go ahead without the legal thing, Storm.
okay. I move to reject all RFP bids and rebid the project for performance in spring of 2022.
Okay. Do I have a second on the motion? We have a second from Laurel. Any discussion on the motion to reject RFP bids and rebid in spring of 2022? Any discussion?
Well,
I don't know that it needs to be in the motion, but I would ask that we have some of the communication with the companies that we have talked about.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that understood?
I will formulate
Sure,
a
that's it.
response to them and I'll email you in the morning before I send it to them.
Well,
And, Christian, you had.
Yeah, I was gonna say, should we put the names of the two vendors on that we've selected? I mean, to make it more,
Well, I said all RFP bids, so it would be inclusive.
I think that's adequate.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Okay, we have a majority, we have 5 voting present, and we have 5 in affirmative. Okay, that takes care of that one.
can you send me that so I have the right wordage? Can you email me the?
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, thank you, Bill. All right, let's move to agenda item number 2. This is discussion and action on second and final reading for approval of ordinance 2021-03. The Planning Commission, we had the first reading approved on November 8th. This is an ordinance to realign our Planning Commission to West Virginia Code. And it basically involves section 133.02, subsection A, subsection 5, just a very minor word change. Do I have a motion for final reading? Chris, do I have a second on the motion? Second from Laura. Any discussion on the motion for final reading? Okay, all those in favor for final reading of 2021.03 Planning Commission, raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item number 3, discussion action on second and final reading for approval of ordinance 2021-04 Board of Zoning Appeals. Same thing. This was the first reading was approved on November 8th, our regular town council meeting. This involves 2 minor changes: 134.01. 134.08 subsection A, minor wording changes so that this ordinance becomes fully compliant with West Virginia Code. Chair, I entertain a motion to approve final reading. I have a motion on the floor from Chris. Do I have a second on the motion? Second from Laurel. Any discussion on the motion to approve for final reading? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you. The 4th agenda item is discussion and action on second and final reading for ordinance 2021-05 appeals. This also is arriving to comport with West Virginia Code. Had first reading November 8th, 2021. Minor changes in 1328.01A, 1328.01B, 1328.01C. Chair, I entertain a motion to approve for final reading. So motion to approve for final reading is done by Chris. Do I have a second on the motion? Second from Laurel. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Final reading approved 5-0. Last item on the agenda is discussion regarding travel to Charleston, West Virginia by the mayor. I've been in contact with our state senator, and she is encouraging that we've had several discussions regarding myself traveling to Charleston while they're in session in December. And I forget what it's called, Christian, or what that's called.
This is where they do a lot of, I don't know the name of it, but they do their pre-meeting
That's what it was.
discussions and.
So they will, all the legislators will be there. And I'm requesting authorization for official travel. The schedule is starting to be built by Senator Rucker's staff. My intention is to meet with the Secretary of Transportation and the head of the Department of Highways. That meeting is already tentatively set up, and I'll be meeting with those individuals to discuss issues relating to the infrastructure in Harpers Ferry, and hopefully garner some additional support for that. Also attempting to get into a meeting with the governor for the same reason. And that is being worked on during the same time frame to get in and also meet with the governor's appointee, the director of tourism. And then there are several legislative leaders, the president of the West Virginia Senate, the head of the legislature. I also think it's important that I meet with those individuals and lay out the needs of Harpers Ferry, not only the needs that we've already expressed and have been working on regarding the trail and High Street, but a lot of other infrastructure needs, and also talk about our water distribution. And the best way I think to do that is to start at the top and work with those officials. So I'm requesting, travel to Charleston. I would depart here December 7th and return December 9th, knowing full well that if I leave here on December 7th, I'll get there probably at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and maybe if I'm lucky, have one meeting in the afternoon, and then have the whole next day for a meeting with the legislators in Charleston. And I'm estimating the travel is approximately 700 miles at 56 cents a mile, $392, $400, something like that for travel. Per diem, 2 days. I forget what the per diem rate is. It's somewhere $90, $100 a day. So 2 days at that. And then M&I, miscellaneous and incidental expenses. That's basically your meals and tolls and things like that. That's probably around 100. So I'm estimating somewhere between $710 to $750 for travel. And you can be rest assured that I'm cognizant of our budget, and I'm not going to be staying at the Greenbrier and all that sort of stuff. So I think this is a good thing because we all know how we feel sometimes in the Eastern Panhandle. And I think it's important that we highlight Harpers Ferry to the legislative leaders, the governor, director of tourism, about positive things regarding Harpers Ferry. So I'm requesting approval to do that.
The motion, I move to.
Point of order. Point of order. This is only listed as a discussion item.
Oh,
so
yes.
We
Okay.
can't actually make any formal motion.
Yeah, so you were just gonna advise them that that's what you were going to do.
Yeah.
So they were aware of that expense coming forward.
Why didn't we put in action?
Motion. I asked Kevin about it. If he felt like he-
Okay,
I
all
asked
right,
Kevin.
we'll do it this way. So you know the background.
Yeah, we know.
Everybody knows the
It's
background.
official, you're going on official business for the town. Yeah, that's fine. I think you can do that on your own volition without the town council's.
I think, yeah, okay, let's do this.
And you were a little bit
We may have a
concerned.
special meeting on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, because we're going to complete all the interviews
No, yeah.
for the town clerk position, the second round on Monday, and that would consist of, Storm, have you been read in on that? Okay, so the
Yeah,
final
I've received the materials and I'm reviewing them.
Okay, so the final interview panel is Storm and myself and John Brown. We have 3 applicants to interview on Monday. And I know how anxious John Brown is to get someone on board as quick as possible because there is some specialized training that is only offered once a month. And if this individual that we will hire, if we miss the deadline, then it's not until January. And this is critical computerized training that they use in the police department. So I was going to request that we have set up a special council meeting on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, to approve the recommended selectee for myself, John Brown, and Storm. And then what I could do is put this on as an action item with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that way, and Storm, thanks for bringing that to my attention, unfortunately.
And I think we
Oh,
should
yeah.
put it in, the way we do that for that meeting is explain how the whole process worked, because there was a lot more work done by
Yeah.
earlier. Let's talk about that. So that becomes known in the towns. They know that there's been a lot of people involved in this.
I would make one suggestion on the talks in Charleston. I think that's wonderful that you're going. Based upon my conversations with Region 9 and with Rails to Trails Conservancy nonprofits, this is an ongoing problem. It's not just a problem in Harpers Ferry. It's a problem all around the state that West Virginia is losing. West Virginia little towns are losing lots of federal money because they are faced with these matches that they can't come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, and I'm going to make sure that that's discussed, particularly with the DOH and Director of Tourism would be a big help there. Okay, anything else for the good of the order before I entertain a motion or somebody to adjourn? We have a motion to adjourn from Chris. Do I have a second on the motion? We have a second from Laurel. Any discussion to adjourn? All those in favor of adjourning? We are now adjourned at 5:50 p.m.
Bye, Storm.
Thank you, Star.
Take care, Star.
Thank you.
Thanks.